When it comes to debt, are you a duck? You know, if you've seen these videos like this, you know, the ducks are swimming along, and on the surface, you know, it just always looks like they're just gliding effortlessly. But anytime the camera will dip down, and that's what you see, you know, little feet are just going 100 miles an hour, paddling like mad. Have you ever felt like this financially? Or you know some people who are just constantly financing homes and cars and clothes and vacations, and it seems like they're just always trying to paddle frantically away from the bill collectors. Money Magazine reports this. More Americans are retiring in the red. So not long ago, debt was a 4-letter word if uttered in the same breath as retirement. Before waltzing off into their golden years, Americans paid off their loans and celebrated by burning their mortgage. How times have changed. A third of folks 65 and older have a mortgage with a median balance of $56,000. Seniors 65 and up carry an average of $10,235 on credit cards. And Gary Johnson was lamenting the spiraling national debt. I looked at the debt clock on Friday. It was 20 billion 500 million. And he was speculating that said, if we do not come to grips with our debt addiction as a nation, there will come a day when the taxes we pay will not be sufficient to pay the interest on the debt. We will be insolvent. And Christian financial author, the late Larry Burkett, said, debt is not normal in any economy and shouldn't be normal for God's people, regardless of how right our culture might want it to seem today. We live in a debt-ridden society that is now virtually dependent on a constant expansion of credit to keep the economy going. So that's symptomatic of a society no longer willing to follow God's directions. Debt is not normal in any economy. We need a new normal. How do we get into so much debt? And Gary Johnson defined the word itself as an acronym. Debt, D is for desire. I want it now. And I want it all. E is for entitlement. I am entitled to this. I am entitled to the best. I deserve it. B is for bigger and better. The TV we have is not big enough. The computer we have is not fast enough. The phone I have doesn't store enough. Need something bigger. T in this acronym is for taught. It's taught. We learn it. Government does it. Family does it. I'll do it. I'll teach my kids how to. No, we got to break that chain and teach my kid something different. And we'll kind of have a sample practice for that later in the message. Changing our thinking on debt. Retraining ourselves, our families. When you change the way you think, you can change the way you act. Romans 12:2 states that. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that can apply here. The New Testament will teach about repenting, making a change. And the Greek word there, the original that they're translating, is metanoio. It's a compound. Change mind. Change your mind. Change your thinking. Change your behavior. We need to change the way we think about debt, or we'll never change the way we live with debt. It's going to take work. This is going to take work to make this change. And I'll just put out a note to our guests and our first-time visitors. You are obviously joining us mid-series. Okay, you can see in there it says Part 3. This is actually mid-equation. We're making our way through this equation that will put up the 4 principles plus 4 practices equal real profits, as originally crafted by Dr. Gary Johnson preaching at the Indian Creek Christian Church. And obviously this is week 3 of 4, so you could catch up on the first 2 online if you wanted, because we're moving now. We're on the right side of the plus, and you can see we spent the last 2 weeks talking about the principles: gratitude, contentment, trust, humility, the biblical passages, the foundations, the principles, and now we're on the right side of the plus with the practices. And now it's time to do the application, if you will. The lecture's over. Now it's time for a little bit of lab work. This is what needs to be done. Paul follows this format a lot of times with his letters, the books in the Bible. Ephesians has 6 chapters. You look at the first 3, instruction, principle, think this way. And then chapter 4, 5, and 6 is more application, practice. Do this with your hands and your mouth. So the first of the 4 practices here on the right side in this equation is this: debt-free living. That's what we want to get. That's what I want to practice. We drove by LA Fitness the other night down there on Hamilton Road. The lot was packed. I was impressed. And then I giggled. I thought, that's a bunch of people who are trying to slim down before Thanksgiving and Christmas so they can bulk back up. But I admire the effort, the attitude. You know that anything diet, exercise related is going to take work. How often it takes effort. If I want to be more fit, I'm going to have to cut down on the bad and increase the good. I'm pretty sure most of us are coming up on a potentially huge meal on Thursday, or close to that. And I hope that your table is full of a lot of really good, healthy food. And the question for many of us is what? Do I need a second plate of all of that really good, healthy food? Or a third? Financial diet. Do we need this? Do we need this much of this? And do we need this enough that we'll borrow money for it? Impulse. It's one thing to be in the checkout line at the grocery store and I survey the shelves, which they put them there on purpose, and there's a Snickers. Oh, I got to have that, throw it in the cart. It's a completely different story when you're standing on the sidewalk and an SUV goes by. Oh, I got to have that, throw it in the garage. That's a whole different level of impulse. And debt. And these are 3 rules from Dr. Johnson to help curb impulse or debt spending. Rule number 1 is, do I really need this? Which, of course, Philippians 4:19, my God will supply all your needs according to his riches. Do we need this? Some people are head over heels in debt because they keep buying what they want beyond what they need. Stop signing for debt for stuff just because we want it. Rule number 2, establish a solo spending limit. Couple has to decide. I will not individually spend beyond X amount without consulting. $100, $200, whatever your limit. This is why I don't have more camera lenses than I do. Because they're all the ones I want now are over the limit. And it gets stopped. Rule number 3, wait. Never make a big ticket purchase in the moment. Wait, pray, think, compare. I believe that both of our sons now drive the vehicles that they want because they waited. You saw them. They spent 7 years one and 8 years the other driving those hand-me-down sedans, Centuries and Malibus that were lovely. But they waited. And they were both able to go into a dealer or somebody and say, this is what I want. And able to get up and walk out and say, no, this is what I want. And I applaud that patience. And credit cards, kind of a few brief comments here on credit cards and the potential or the danger. I'm confident that Denise and I are now at the point where we can handle our card. Getting cash back. There's money weekly in the fund, that we use to pay stuff. Gary Johnson in the book, he and his wife, they paid off their card monthly, very faithful, collected enough air miles to fly their extended family to Hawaii for their 25th wedding anniversary, first class. But they're very diligent to pay it off. We pay it off every month. The church does the same thing. Church body, give me a credit card, it's in my wallet. And the guys just decided last month, hey, let's get a card that'll give us something back. We spend all this money, we pay it off. Why don't we let the credit card give the church a few $100s every week, which they'll do. And this is a huge if, but capital letter if. If you can handle it that way and pay it off, you can do that. If you can't do it, don't do it. Put it down, cut it up, get rid of it. Stop. I have been on a number of planes, flown on several planes, jumped out of one perfectly good plane. We go skydiving. Neither of those practices equip me to fly a plane. I'm afraid some people A credit card in their hands is about as much potential for disaster as airline controls in mine. It's just stay away from it, put it down, don't touch it. And we said a couple weeks ago, it takes a while to dig yourself down into a financial hole. It's going to take time to climb back up out. You have to be patient, but you have to be climbing. You have to be active. You have to put these things into practice. Gary Johnson shared the standing rule of hiking down into the Grand Canyon. Does anybody know what the rule is? He references, he says, it's a standing rule, hiking into the canyon. It takes twice as long to hike back up as it takes you to get down. If you take 2 hours to hike from rim to floor, you will spend 4 hours hiking out. Be prepared. Temperature degree change, variation from rim to floor, 20 degrees plus. Be prepared. Practice. Plan your trip. It's going to take time. How much time does it take to sign up for a credit card? 30 seconds. How much time does it take to pay off said credit card? Sample story. Person has $4,800 balance on their credit card, and they are paying 17% interest. If you make minimum payments, take 40 years to pay off the balance, and you will pay $11,000 in interest on your $4,800 purchase, which 40 years later will be worth nothing. And financial experts have different suggestions on how you go about paying off or paying down your debt. If you have several debts, some camps will say, find the highest interest rate and pay that down first and go from there. Gary Johnson's like, find your smallest balance, pay that off first so you have something to celebrate, take your momentum, take that money. I don't have a preference. You can camp in either camp, just camp somewhere. And pay it off, and then take that money and go to the next and move on. And sometimes I'm feeling what this is like now. When you stand somewhere and you're 50, 60 years old, it makes a lot more sense and sounds a lot easier. I'm trying to remember what it was like when we were 20 and 30. Paying off the mortgage. What was the suggestion? They said, get an amortization schedule. And Gary Johnson's suggestion, he said, make your payment, and then add next month's principal. And he said, that's not going to be very much. Add that. So I looked that up, and to put this sample up, I just had a random calculator that came up, and the mortgage amount's $165,000, 30 years, 4.5%. The payment, monthly payment, $836. And then when you get the amortization schedule down here, the principal for the next payment, $218.10. Now, Gary Johnson would say, it's no big deal. Pay the $218 extra. I think there might have been some times when we were early, it's like, that's a big deal. But if you can do that at the beginning, you cut the term in half. This particular loan, the total interest that said was $136,000, you would save $68,000. Where are we going to get that money? If you had anticipate an income tax return instead of whatever else it goes for every year, we're going to pay off principal. Leadership in this church, we go around that circle constantly. When we have extra money, do something to improve the facility, do something to help one of the missions, do something to pay off the mortgage. We just keep going around. It's time to go to the mortgage again. There's another $5,000 pretty soon slated to pay down the principal. There is debt mentioned in the Bible. It's not intended to be long-term. This is Deuteronomy 15, 1 and 2. At the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. This is how it is to be done. Every creditor shall cancel the loan he has made to his fellow Israelite. He shall not require payment from his fellow Israelite or brother, because the Lord's time for canceling debts has been proclaimed. 7 years. And the Israelites would make loans knowing how many years until and loan accordingly. In the book, Too Much, the book claims that this passage in Deuteronomy was used as a basis for debt early years of our country. They said in the 1920s, most homes were built with cash, and if you needed a mortgage, they would give you 7 years, an amortization of 7 years. At present, what's the majority? 15 be great, 30's the norm. As of 1996, if you live in Japan, you can get a 100-year term. 100-year amortization. Somebody else is going to be paying that. The Bible doesn't prohibit borrowing, but it doesn't encourage it. It's not sinful, but it's supposed to be short term. And talking about marriage, I said how do you teach a kid this? That Gary Johnson said, you become the bank of mom and dad. Teach them when they're young. A young person, he wants to buy a video game console, would be a good example. They don't have the money for that. How are we going to work this out? Well, first thing is you need an income. So you're going to become an employee of the household, and you fill out a job application, we'll agree on your job, we'll agree on your wages, you work every week. At the end of the week, turn in your time card, and if you did your job, you get paid. If you didn't do your job, you don't get paid, you get laid off. That's how the world works. And then after a set amount of time, now you've got an established income, now you can apply for a loan. And we'll give you the paperwork, and this is what you have to fill out the loan for the item, and our loan is going to require that you need 20% down. You have to make 20% of the cash. That's delayed gratification. That's important. Teach them to wait. You give me 20% down, we'll loan you the rest of the money. With a schedule, you got to keep doing your job, right? You keep going to work. You keep making payments on your loan. If you fall behind in your payments, what do they get? You get a note on your pillow, a reminder, delinquency. You better learn to go talk to the bank. Civilly, politely, have a discussion, get this taken care of, because if you're not making your payments, what happens? That gets repossessed and sold. I'd say sold to a sibling at a cut rate. That'll teach something, but you gotta, if you don't learn at home with the game, you're going to be in a world of hurt out there where it's not a game. Proverbs 22:7 says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. And the word slave there is identical to the Hebrews in Egypt. They're slaves. It was not God's desire. And they worked to get out. There's one good debt. If you want, what's a good debt for a Christian to incur? Romans 13:8, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another, for he who loves others has fulfilled the law. That's the ideal. I want to pay off all my interest and debt that I owe other people so I can have money to use as I want to show other people the love of Christ. Wouldn't it be more fun? Here's a list. Would it be more fun to use our money this way? Instead of paying off interest to somebody else, we have the money to, here's a list. Buy groceries for a single mom. Help a struggling widow with utilities. Rescue someone from human trafficking. Take a short-term mission trip. Just spontaneously help. Friend, family, stranger. Need help? Here you go. Providing monthly support for kids in developing countries. Assisting our kids or our grandkids, especially when they're early on in life and they need help. Helping someone who's just been released from prison, get a new start. Help plant a church. And you could add 900 more to that list. If only we had the money. Well, how do you free up the money? You got to free up the money first to pay off the debt. Brown bag instead of buying it every day. Clip the coupons, garage sale proceeds, part-time job. Make a list. You have to have a list of the debts. Prioritize, make a schedule, attack this one, celebrate, move on. Too many credit cards? Some of them got to go. Cut them up, close them. Debt-free living is a practice. It's a habit. And the other practice is saving. The second practice that we'll look at today, saving, which I kind of giggle, but it's sad, which has to be defined in this culture. What is saving? The practice of intentionally setting aside a portion of what we have for the tomorrows of life. Save. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. That's Proverbs 21:20. And I want to leave that verse about food up on the wall for a minute. We talked about having $1 million. Would you like to have $1 million? Most people, oh yeah, appreciate that. Especially young people. $1 million would be great. How's a young person collect $1 million? $3,500 a year. You can put aside $3,500 a year. If you can find 7% ROI, you'll have in the future $1 million. $3,500 a year is $9.59 a day. And if you're sitting there going, I don't have $9.59 a day, choice food, gulp down, every time I go to Chipotle or Cane's, $9. and about 59 cents. Now, I don't eat there every day, but it's $9. I've told you before, I've saved about $1,000 just collecting the fives that I get in change in a year's time. If I give something and they give me a five and I put it in my pocket, that's become $1,000. And that's hard for me. Denise and Derek, they're better savers than Brandon and I, truth be told. I have to learn to, saving's not my nature. Gratitude may not be in our nature. Spending's natural for a lot of people. Consuming's natural. Conserving is not. January 2015, a study, the Pew Charitable Trust, 7 out of 10 Americans are struggling with too much debt and too much spending. The bottom 20% of American households have 9 days saving on hand. The top earners have roughly 52 days of liquid funds available in the event of emergency. That's far below the recommended 3 to 6 months of equivalent salary in savings. 6 months, I heard that, you laugh. 6 months in savings, yeah, right. I have 6 months salary set aside. You know anybody that's been laid off for 6 months or more? I can point you to some families in the church who know what that feels like. Job security is not what it was. We talked a couple weeks ago about, my dad had the same job all his life. Now the average tenure in a job is 4.4 years. And some people have between 10 to 12 different jobs before they retire. You ever had any downtime between jobs? Or what if you're doing a job and you hate your job? This is a quote that Andre Agassi in his own memoir, I hate tennis. I hate it with a dark secret passion, and I always have. He said, I hate tennis, and still I keep playing. I hit all morning and all afternoon because I have no choice. Won 8 Grand Slams, millions of dollars, former number 1 ranked, hated his work. Felt trapped by that. Saving is work. We're going to need savings. If you've ever had a car or a kid, either of those ever get sick. And that can be a few $1,000s in a heartbeat on both ends. Oh, it's going to happen. We have to be able to be prepared. Remember that story? Jesus told us a parable, a teaching in Luke 15 about a son who is called the prodigal, which means reckless or wasteful. And he goes to his dad and says, Dad, I just want my share now. Give me my inheritance now. And the dad liquidates some of the estate, gives it to the boy, and if you know the story, he goes out, wastes it, reckless living. A lot of fun in the beginning. Then the money runs out. Not as much fun. Pretty soon he doesn't have as many friends, and eventually he doesn't even have enough food. And he's wise enough to go home, repentant, humbled, and be restored. He's prodigal, wasteful. Didn't save any of that. Contrast that with the hero last Sunday night, Joseph, Genesis 41, the kids' lesson last Sunday night. We talked about Joseph leading the people of Egypt. If you know that account, Pharaoh has those dreams about the cattle and the wheat, and Joseph interprets both sets of dreams. Says, this is God telling you exactly what's going to happen. 7 years of plenty and bumper crops to be followed by 7 years of famine. Be prepared. You ought to prepare. And Pharaoh says, that's a great idea. You work on that for me. You store up. So Joseph has to be the guy to save up 1/5 every year in the good years. And I'm guessing that there are some Egyptians who just want to gulp that choice food down. He says, no, we need to set it aside because in the coming 7 years, you're going to need it. And if they hadn't listened to him, they'd starve to death. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. Are we in the habit of giving? That's a little hint. That's next week's message. Giving and saving right off the top. First things first. The class across the foyer, reordering your finances. These were the notes that came to me. You start with your annual income, and you have to subtract the debt, the taxes, the obligations. That will leave you with your available income. And out of that, we are going to subtract off the top the giving percentage and the savings percentage. I start there, and then that leaves me with the last, which is our consumable income. That's what you have to consume or do the rest with. Because I've already factored in the savings at the beginning. Who should save? Everybody. Start them out early. Piggy bank. Passbook. It's not about the rate. It's about the routine. Getting in the habit of saving. How much should I save? You may have heard a lot of people start with the 10, 10, 80 percentages. Give 10%. Save 10%. Live on the 80. Start early in a practice. Could you set aside 3% of your home's value? Say we got $150,000, 3%, $4,500 a year. We're going to save $86 a week. You save that up for the home improvement and repairs, things you know are coming, and then we save it and we wait and we do it after we have the amount. When should we start saving? Now, as early as possible. Gary Johnson, in his whole book, he keeps saying you want to be on the right side of the interest. You don't want to be paying the interest out. You want the interest to be coming to you. So be on the right side. Compound interest. How are the young people going to turn Chipotle into millions? That's compound interest. It's going to take a long time. Put it in there. Leave it in there. And it says the rule of 72. How long will it take for my saving to double? The rule of 72 says divide 72 by your interest rate. If you have an investment at 5%, 72 divided by 5, it's about 15 years for that to double. So you got to stick with it, stay out of it. Just leave it alone. Where do you save all this money? Not in your mattress. Let's see. This is 2009. CNN ran this story. Elderly Israeli woman saved over $1 million in American and Israeli funds, all of it in her mattress. She did not trust banks. She'd lived through several downturns. She had good reason. She felt safe with all her money, arm's length, when she went to bed every night, and she didn't tell a soul. She didn't even tell her kids. And she went on a trip. And her daughter looked at her mom's lumpy mattress. She said, I'm going to surprise Mom, get her a new mattress. Took her mattress to the dump. Mom came back from the trip, laid down on the bed. The picture that they ran showed the daughter at the dump looking for the mattress. The dump had to hire guards because she wasn't the only person looking for the mattress. Everybody's out there looking for an easy million. We have qualified people that I can recommend that will help you find the right vehicles. We're going to save. General rule. Greater the reward, greater the risk. You want a higher return, stocks, etc., there's more risk. If you don't want to take that much risk, that's fine, they're safer, but you're going to have less return. The older you are, the less risk you want to have. Why? Because I don't have as much time to recover now as I did when I was Derek and Brandon's age. They can afford it. Diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread it out. If this fails, I still have this, this, and this. Scams, the scams are multiplying daily now. Most people are going to say, oh yeah, I remember Bernie Madoff did that. 65 billion. And you start reading the articles about that, and the guy said, well, he didn't really make 65 billion. It was really about 20 billion. He was just telling people 65 and 20 billion. He didn't really get the whole 20 billion. He had to pay some people. He really only used about $1 billion. I'm like, you scammed people out of $1 billion, is what you're telling me. And they never got it back. If the deal is too good to be true, it probably is. And it's likely a scam. If the individual offering this investment is always giving vague answers to your questions, potential scam. If you look this up and you can't find much written online about this, it might be a scam. If they're pressuring you, invest now. Has to be now. That could be a scam. And why, the last part of the saving, why do I save? So I can share. So I can care. 1 Timothy 5:8, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. I want to save so that I have these resources to share, to care for other people in our family. I liked where the dad asked his daughter's boyfriend, son, how much money do you have in the bank? I don't know, I haven't shaken it lately. That guy said, I need somebody to be able to care for my daughter. Jesus hanging on the cross. His own death, and he's concerned for his mom. Who's going to, John, take care of my mother? We might have aging parents or family members to take care of. Try to help kids with school somehow. Sharing it with other people. Acts 4, Barnabas, the son of encouragement. What's that guy always doing? Giving, sharing. I got this field. I'll sell it. Here's the money. Give it to somebody else. Use it. Acts 20:35. It's more blessed to give than to receive. Just like debt-free living, saving is a practice. It's a practice that needs to be practiced until it becomes a habit. Do I need to decide today, I'm going to start saving more? Maybe we need to decide we're going to change our vocabulary. A lot of us, the easy out is, oh, we don't have the money for that. Just because you don't want to deal with the conversation. It's okay to change your vocabulary and say, we choose not to spend our money on that. Okay, I mean, we have the money, but no, we choose not to spend it that way. There's a difference between we can't, we won't. How will I save? How will I choose to save and spend my money? And we close this sermon like we have the two previous ones. You can spend a lot of time. We need to talk about money, but it's still tangible, physical, earthly. What's the greatest investment any individual can make? Investing my life in Jesus Christ. Money's a great tool, can be used, very beneficial, wisely managed, all of that. But in the end, God's not going to ask how many zeros are there in your accounts. He's going to ask, how did you respond to my son's offer of grace? How did you invest your heart and your mind and your soul in following my truth? Let's pray and we'll close. Heavenly Father, we thank you again for this opportunity to be reminded of your truth that endures, and we are grateful that you have given us patterns for every aspect and facet of life, financially and otherwise, that your word contains that blueprint, that pattern. Thank you for providing and giving and working with us through our best efforts and our sacrifices, and in those times when we forget and fall short. We pray that we would give not only our monies to you, but our hearts, our minds, our souls as well. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. As the worship team comes back to the front, we continue to encourage you. Maybe this is the point in time when you know you need to make your own personal decision to give your life to the Lord. Let's stand together. We'll sing this invitation. We'll come to the altar.
You know, there's no greater decision you'll make than the decision to follow Jesus Christ. And there's no reason to wait. As I said last week, you're not promised tomorrow, you're promised today. Well, fortunately, if you didn't make the decision last week, God didn't come back yet. You have more time. The water's warm. You can be immersed into Christ today. So don't tarry. Just come to the altar.
Doing the
treasure that you have and the willingness to share that this week with your family and others. We know that we wait for the treasure of eternity. You may have gotten an email for Barb Johnson's passing. Barb Thompson passed away. I've got her obituary here. If you didn't get that email, I wanted a copy from the Johnstown area, so I'll take those back with me. You never know. And I just pray that you will be able to take advantage of our time to share with Bill with his presentation this morning. We will not, it's not the bulletin, I forgot, we will not meet Wednesday. We don't have anything here in the building Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So many people are on the road, etc., traveling. So it's not in the bulletin, but we're not meeting here this coming Wednesday. And Jeff, anything you have for tomorrow or the other?
The only thing we have one on this week, we are still collecting food to take to several families. The families that I have are actually in Heath. I have two families, equaling about 12 people total, but we are still collecting food to take them. We are taking the food on Tuesday. That was just going to be a better option all the way around. So we are still collecting food. If you guys want to bring anything in to help give to them, or if you want me to give you a list, we can do all of that. So anything will help at this point. Father, we just want to come to you now, and again, we want to take this time to be in your presence and to praise you and worship you as the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings. And Father, we just thank you for that. We thank you for the grace that you have shown us, for the love that you have shown us, and the mercy that you continue to give us. Father, we thank you for this time that we can come together, that we can hear from your word, and just learn a little bit more about you and what it means to save and what it means to be smart about our financial decisions. And Father, I ask that as we go from here that you continue to guide us in these things and continue to encourage us in our endeavors. Father, again, we love you. It's all that we ask and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Let's close this morning by saying, Lord, you're beautiful. 3 verses.